There's a gold mine in the sky far away. We will find it, you and I, some sweet day. There'll be favor just for you down the line, where the skies are always blue, pal of mine. Take your time, old mule, I know you're growing lame, but we'll pasture in the stars when we strike that flame, and we'll sit up there and watch the world go by when we find that long-lost gold mine in the sky.
Happy days are here again, they're Chandler days, so cheer again. He's a man for each Kentuckian, happy days are here again.
Albert Benjamin Happy Chandler grew up poor on a small Kentucky farm. He went on to become governor, senator, commissioner of baseball, and a Democratic candidate for president. For half a century, Happy Chandler was America's preeminent Southern politician.
In 1982, I was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They said I was iron-willed and honest. What's wrong with that? I didn't say that. They said that.
Happy days are here again.
I said that if I had to give up all the important offices that I've held during my lifetime and I was told I couldn't keep but one, I'd be the governor of Kentucky. If everybody knew what I know about, they all want to live in Kentucky, and then we wouldn't have room for them, you understand? Ah, Lord. Home ground. Where they said there's a lot of nice people and a few disgruntled storeheads. So I'll never forget that either. How do you do, Your Royal Highness? How are you?
Good to see you.
I'm delighted to see you. So this is like being on home grounds
That's
again.
right. That's
Good
right.
luck
So
to
you know your way around.
Yes, ma'am. I think
welcome to the Capitol.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Good luck.
60 years ago, Happy made his first trip to this building. He was a small-town lawyer elected to the Kentucky State Senate. The new kid impressed the politicians in the State House. He looked like a winner.
We didn't use the word glamour so much in those days, but he had it. There was a kind of new look about him, which is very attractive in politics. He was a new face. He was one that obviously had a lot going for him.
Happy quickly graduated from the state senate. In the next election, he was lieutenant governor. The party bosses predicted a bright future if he towed the line. Happy had ideas of his own.
A very audacious move that he made once when he caught the governor, Governor Ruby Laffoon, out of the state. Laffoon had gone up to Washington to confer with Democratic leaders there, and as soon as he crossed the state line, Happy became acting governor, became governor of the state under the state law, and he immediately issued a call for a special session to enact a primary law, and the special session met, the primary law was enacted and went into effect.
Happy's primary law deflated the powerful political machine. The bosses lost their smoke-filled convention. The people gained a free and open primary election. And across the state, Happy was lauded as the people's champion.
He loves to quote from Shakespeare in explaining his decision to run for governor following the enactment of the primary law. And that, of course, the famous quotation, "There's a tide."
There's a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune, you know.
Urged on by hundreds of letters, Happy entered the governor's race. He bypassed the cities and courthouses and took his campaign to the people. He drove to every pig-picking barbecue and square dance in the state. Happy spoke the language of the people. He often finished a fiery speech with a rousing rendition of My Old Kentucky Home.
We went to hear him speak, and afterward he sang, and I just thought he was a fascinating man. His personality, everything. he really, and he was a very handsome man when he was young.
He had a good voice, too.
Oh.
He could really sing.
In 1935, the people gave Happy a narrow victory over the Machines candidate. He was sworn in as America's youngest governor. Happy ran on a reform platform, and he didn't let the people down. He built roads, schools, and hospitals. He cleaned house in the Capitol and saved $17 million. That was a lot of money in those days.
My father told me when I was growing up, if I spent more than I took in, I'd go broke. And I believed him, you understand?
No one was more surprised at Happy's success than his father. Joe Chandler was a poor but honest tobacco farmer. Happy's mother deserted the family when Chandler was 4 years old.
I was born on a small farm 1 mile north of Carden, Kentucky, C-O-R-Y-D-O-N. I was born on the Diamond Island Road on Bastille Day in 1898. The house of Chandler Bond, it wasn't no rich man's house. Poor as I was, he eated anybody's house. Did you ever hear him make a talk while he was running for governor? He'd tell him he ate at anybody's house, anybody. I carried the papers, I was the paper boy. I carried this morning news around the streets of Carden in 1909. And between the times I was waiting for the train to bring my papers, I was catching fly balls and Mr. Bob was hitting them for me. Well, we played over across the railroad track. I played baseball every waking hour, you know. Yeah, this is an old baseball diamond. Used to be a barn sit back there. When I was a boy, they called me Ty Cobb Chandler. And they asked me, could you hit? I said, they didn't name me boys for Ty Cobb couldn't hit. Well, one time we was playing ball, we chewed up, got his father to Empire. We come out here and his father called a bad decision, he thought. We never played no more ball, argued all the rest of the evening. He just hated to lose that bad. He didn't want to lose. Yeah.
I didn't play baseball with him, but I might have been run over if I had gotten in his way. And I can remember Mother saying, Happy, don't play so hard with the children. They're just children. And he would say, well, they can't learn any younger. You've got to get out of the way, or you've got to throw the ball, or whatever. And it was his idea that you just start out right away, teaching people that nobody's going to make it easy for you.
Happy relied on his own resources when he enrolled in prestigious Transylvania University in 1917.
He did not go on scholarships. He worked his way through. As he put it, he appeared on that campus with a red sweater, a smile, and a $5 bill.
Nicknames are something that the kids give you. And I say if they'd called me Stinky, I'd have been stuck with it, you know. And in about 17 or 18 on the campus of Transylvania, there's a kid from Lawrenceburg named Hawkins, called out across the campus and said, there goes Happy Chandler. I was probably singing or making some sort of noise, you know. I was full of vinegar. And so he called me Happy Chandler, and it stuck.
Oh, and I think his nickname has been worth $1 billion to him in publicity. I don't know that an Albert Chandler from Kentucky would ever have gotten nearly as far nationally as a Happy Chandler did. I think it's the best thing that ever happened to him when that nickname got stuck on him.
I think Mother felt that he got the nickname Happy, not because he was whistling and laughing all the time, but because he tried to keep the smile on his face so that people would not see that he was unsure or uncertain of himself, so he just smiled a lot.
Roses in December.
In 1929, Happy met a pretty school teacher from Virginia. Mildred Watkins was already engaged. Happy soon beat the other fellow out.
No one's marriage is all good time, but the most of it, and the parts that weren't too hot, we met them together. I've heard some of them say they had so much more fun before they were married. Well, you just don't get married for fun and games. It depends on your attitude towards marriage. And I think Happy and I both had the training back of us that when you're married, my mother always taught me you pull in the double harness. And if one of them slacks up, that's throwing a whole lot more too much on the other side. You pull and double harness.
Pull your own weight, you know.
Dad and Mother met in a production of Little Women. And Dad was professor, the German professor, and Mother was Amy. So right there it tells you that they were headed for show business, and they detoured into other endeavors.
At a mass rally in Bowling Green, I shook hands with 25,000 people one afternoon, and it was a hot summer day, and I had a white suit on. Water was running in my shoes.
That's right.
And my hand was swollen twice as big from shaking hands. And I had Waterfield with me, who was running for lieutenant governor. He gave out about halfway and retreated, you know.
So did I.
But I stayed.
was down there in the line, but I quit too.
No,
But he stayed there long as there was anybody.
I used to speak 35, 40 minutes and then shake hands for 2 hours.
I can remember Dad speaking with such fire and with such conviction. The people that were listening to him felt that there was nothing that he couldn't do for them, that he was going to get them electricity. A lot of them didn't have electricity. He was going to take the sales tax off their food and their medicine, and he said it in ways that just brought people up out of their seats, you know, and he's just one of the very few leaders in the world, and there have been a few, that can elicit that response from people. Very emotional. He deals in emotion. And I've always been a trifle embarrassed by emotion.
We're strong, we're capable, and we shall move forward in the conviction that the things for which we stand are right, and with God's help, we'll lead this great party of ours to victory in November. Thank you, and God bless you.
He had a wonderful personal touch, which everybody knows about. He called so many people in the audience by their name, you know. And he remembered everybody he'd ever met, as far as I can see. That memory was a remarkable asset politically to Happy, and he cultivated it.
He got up to make his talk, and he said about 5 ways. He said, "That's my friend back there, Brown." That he got 5 boys in service. I did have 5 boys in service, and all 5 was in service.
Campaigning, he ran into people in the mountains that he had talked to the year before, and he remembered what they were talking about. It had something sometime to do with a sow and pig. Yeah. But he remembered whatever it was that they had talked about before, which astounded them, but made them think, you know, that he had put them down in his mind as a special person.
The fellow says, "Are you going to vote for him?" I said, "Hell, yes, he remembered me. He called my name."
He recognized me. Not only that, he kissed me. The first white man ever did kiss me. I was surprised, you know.
By 1938, Happy's term as governor was coming to an end, and he began to look around for something else to do. He decided to run for the Senate. There was a problem. The seat was occupied by Alben Barkley, Senate Majority Leader, future Vice President, and FDR's right-hand man. Happy was in for a tough contest.
Leave him where he is and leave me where I am as United States Senator.
He was scared. Mr. Roosevelt came down here and made 5 speeches in his behalf in one day.
Everybody at that time was courting FDR's support. His popularity was very high. And there was the rivalry from any candidate who was running to get the endorsement of FDR.
Time magazine and the national media generally accused Happy of jumping in and wedging himself in between the president and Senator Barkley.
Happy got himself in there, all right. I guess Happy saw a chance there at least to get pictured with FDR. He was always quick on his feet.
Happy ran head-on against the National Democratic Party and lost to Barkley in the primary. It was Happy's first defeat and potentially a major setback.
Every now and then, you dig a dry hole. Everybody does, no matter what they go. And some of them stay around and cry, you know, and sit down and moan, and that won't do it. That won't make up for it. You got to move your digger and dig someplace else, you know.
7 months later, the junior senator from Kentucky died. Happy was appointed to fill the vacancy and went off to Washington to examine the larger world picture.
The last time we were in Jerusalem, Ben Gurion gave me this Bible, and they go from back to front, you know, you know that. I got a great picture there of Mahatma Gandhi in India. We were in India during the war. That's his signature on his breeches there, you know. One of the 5 senators designated by the Senate to visit the world battlefronts. They're all dead now but me. So I was with MacArthur in New Guinea. I had an opportunity to see the character and conduct of American boys in action all over the world.
In 1945, the war was winding to a close. Happy distinguished himself with his far-sighted work for international harmony. Around this time, he was offered a new job. Happy hated to leave the Senate, but the baseball owners offered what he considered the best job in America and a substantial pay raise.
Cracker Jack here. Cracker Jack. Oh, yeah. Hello, my dear. Hey, Pearl. How are you?
Chandler was offered the commissionership because as a senator, he supported baseball during the war. Happy's predecessor had been dignified and aloof. Happy was open, accessible, and affable. He loved going to games and mixing with players and fans.
I thought I was the best qualified fella in the country to be commissioner. See, I pitched a no-hit game out there in that North Dakota game against the Monoman Indians. Then I hit a home run with the bases loaded in the Bluegrass League at Maysville. So I thought I was the best qualified fellow in the country to be commissioner of baseball.
Happy's era was marked by post-war growing pains. GIs were returning, players were threatening to strike, the Mexican League was siphoning players, and there was the controversial issue of mixing the all-white boys of summer with black players.
My predecessor was Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and he wouldn't let them play. If they were black, they were automatically disqualified. He died in 1944, and just before he died, they asked him again about it, and his answer was, everything's been said about this that's going to be said. The answer is no.
In 1946, in a secret meeting, the owners voted 13-1 against mixing the color lines. Happy counted the ballots. The only vote for integration came from Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Rickey wanted to bring Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers. The owners opposed the idea. If Jackie was to play, Rickey needed the approval and support of the commissioner.
So Rickey called me on the telephone as soon as I got home and said, I've got to see you. And I said, all right, come on. Came down here. I told him, I said, I've thought about this thing many times. I was on the Senate Military Affairs Committee all during the Second World War and had opportunity to observe the character and conduct of American soldiers all over the world. I saw black men and white men and red men and yellow men and all kinds of colors. I wasn't present when the Lord gave out the colors, and I don't know why, but that's the way it is. They're colored. And they were offered to fight and die for the freedom of mankind. And I just can't believe that when a fellow offers his life for the freedom of mankind, when he comes back home, he's told he can't play the national pastime, national sport. And I said, I think this thing ought to be ended. And you bring him in, and I'll approve of the transfer of his contract from Montreal to Brooklyn, and we'll make the fight. The umpires hated him, and he didn't help himself some. He had a chip on his shoulder, and you can't blame him for that because he thought everybody was against him, and nearly everybody was. Dixie Walker told me, for example, he wasn't going to play with him. Ben Chapman, another Alabama boy, said, wait till he comes to Philadelphia, I'll make trouble for him. And I sent him a telegram. I said, if you make trouble for him, I'll make trouble for you.
Jackie endured untold humiliation as he opened the door for other blacks. Player by player, the top black athletes were signed by teams trying to stay competitive. When blacks and whites played together in America's pastime, this was a major crack in the wall of segregation. It advanced civil rights significantly in America. Happy went against the wishes of most owners, players, and fans in signing Jackie's contract. It was a decision a weaker commissioner may have delayed.
It was decision time, and somebody had to make it. I was the only fellow on earth that could.
Any notions the owners may have held that Happy was a smiling, malleable figurehead soon evaporated. Happy was driven by his love for baseball. He worked hard to make it the sport he imagined it to be as a boy. He barred players from racetracks and suspended street tough Leo DeRocher for running with the wrong crowd. He set up a pension fund to protect aging players, and when he found Babe Ruth alcoholic and penniless, he gave the Babe a day in the sun again at Yankee Stadium. The fans cheered Ruth, but booed Happy. The fans were angry over his suspension of DeRocher. Happy was never fully appreciated by the East Coast city slickers.
People in the Northeast said, gee, why is that person so happy? Why is he so pleasant? You know, why is he talking so long and being so friendly? There is that sort of Northeast suspicion of that, you know, maybe for good and for bad. And he probably rubbed people the wrong way.
I first met Happy in 1951 at the Broadway Central Hotel in New York City. We were celebrating the 75th anniversary, I guess, of the National League. And Happy was in his last months as commissioner. I went to the party and I met him, and I was enchanted by him. I really was enchanted by him. I was enchanted by his charm, his good humor, he was fun to be with. I thought it then, and I haven't changed my thinking about Happy in the 35 ensuing years. But I didn't see him again for 18 years. By that time, I was commissioner. Happy had gone back to Kentucky, become governor again, had been forgotten by baseball. I think he resented that. I know he resented it.
That's my friend Bowie Kuhn, who was fourth commissioner of baseball, and a very good one indeed. And I think didn't have any better commissioner in his lifetime than Bowie Kuhn. And of course, he got shabby treatment from the owners, but that's what else is new. They don't give everybody shabby treatment. They don't know everybody, but everybody they do know, they give shabby treatment.
He really thought he had become a leper in baseball, that they had put him aside. He thought he'd been good for baseball, and I think he was good for baseball. And I think he belonged in the Hall of Fame, but he was worried that other fates were at work. And they weren't. Justice was finally done. Happy was put in the Hall of Fame, and he came to Cooperstown, and I'll never forget how thrilled he was to be there, and what a good old daddy he was up there in Cooperstown.
In the spring of '51, Happy's commissionership ended. He was 3 votes shy of having his contract renewed by the owners. Happy put his commissioner's office in Cincinnati so he could look across the river to what he called the Promised Land. Now he would return for good.
Do you think he was disappointed when he was asked to leave?
There's no doubt that he was disappointed when he was asked to leave. I think it came to him at least as a mild shock, if not a major shock.
We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home, far away.
1935, Horace McCullum Sr. drove the Happy Sound Truck. Now it's his son's job.
Beneath a sign that says, "Welcome home, Happy," a crowd estimated at between 4,500 and 5,000 has gathered to hear the closing campaign address of A.B. Happy Chandler, candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor of Kentucky.
Sometimes in politics the game gets a little rough, but I've always insisted if you can't stand the gaff, you ought to get out of the game.
There they are, all here to see the man who pulled the greatest political upset in modern times, Happy Chandler.
In 1955, Happy was back in the governor's mansion. School desegregation was the issue of the day. Across the South, governors were forced to choose sides.
One day at Clay, the mayor of Clay called me on the telephone and said, "That's my country, that's where I was born. Albert," he said, "there ain't no nigger going to school here." And I said to him, "Herman, you own that town, and I don't know whether they are or not, but if they show up, they're going." So one day, 2 little black kids had the whole school. All the kids left and the teachers left, but the little black kids were in school. That was my job. It was the law. At the same time, Wallace was standing at the front door in Alabama. Faubus was telling them they couldn't go to school in Arkansas. And we handled that about, I think the record will show, we handled the integration of schools with about as little trouble Nobody was killed, and with about as little trouble as any state handled it in the United States. And I'm not running for anything. I'm just reciting to you now what happened, you understand? I'm not running from anything either, but...
Governor, it's a pleasure to have a candidate for the presidency on our program this afternoon, but I'm curious to know just how serious are your intentions, sir?
Once I set my hand to the plow, I keep plowing until I get to the end of the furrow and then turn a furrow.
In '56, Happy made a run for the White House. He went off to the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where he received votes in 8 states on the first ballot. The party passed over the old handshaking stump speaker and gave the nod to Urbane Adlai Stevenson. Happy gave it another try in '60. Near the end of his career, he found the competition getting younger and younger.
Satchel Paige said it best of all. He said, don't look back, they may be gaining on you. And I always knew that the youngsters would come along. Everybody knows that. If they don't, they're dumb, you know. And I knew there were fellows who wanted my job. I had some good jobs, you know. And there's always somebody that wants your job, especially if it's a good one. That never dismayed me or never bothered me. It didn't interfere with my... I just tried to keep ahead of them, you understand. And the record will show that I did it fairly well for a number of years.
Unquestionably, the style of appeal had changed. Chandler's greatest appeal was when he was in the flesh and had a great audience around him and could appeal to that audience directly. He had a monumental memory. He was able to ask them about their grandparents and make other personal comments that just made him unbeatable on the stump.
Over the years, Happy made several unsuccessful attempts to regain the governorship. His last race was in 1971. George Vesey covered the campaign.
I think he knew he didn't have a chance to win, but of course he did it bravely. He went around in a van, one of these mobile vans with My Old Kentucky Home blaring from the loudspeaker and bells ringing. It was sort of a chance for him to go around the countryside as a last hurrah and say goodbye to his people. Well, I remember going to this little, it may have even been originally a bootlegger's paradise. Now it was like a little bar and grill out in the middle of nowhere, out in the back of Bourbon County or somewhere. And this little old black lady, must have been about 80 years old, came out of this place, and I don't know if she'd been primed to be there or what, but she like suddenly materialized, and in this great, beautiful voice of hers, she said, "Oh, Governor Chandler, it's so nice to see you again. You were always so good to me." And he said, "Well, Mary, I know you voted for me every time, and you were always here for me, Mary." And it was a great feeling that the two of them had, that they understood each other. They'd been through all these times. I mean, he went back to a time of, they both went back to a time of segregation, and people were generally affectionate of him. I mean, whether they thought he could win or not, they were thanking him for what he had meant to the Commonwealth so many years before.
Hey, maybe anything sweeter than a baby girl. He didn't send it here. Send it someplace else. I'm all but stout for baby girl.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Nice to be here. Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Do you remember L.B. Barton? Do you remember L.B. Barton?
Nicholas County.
Yeah, I'm his daughter.
Oh, my Lord, he was one of my most beloved friends.
He taught a lot of you.
Nicholas County. Well, he was salt of the earth. I'm so glad to see you. So glad to see you. Partner, take care. I'm the only governor that's been elected in anybody's lifetime that went home after he got through. All the rest of them went someplace else. Oh, hell, I came back here. That's where I came from.